Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled about today's topic. We are unpacking a truly groundbreaking volume, America at 250, the complete works of Prof. Dr. Milton Biswas by Peter Hans. Today we're exploring how one incredibly visionary scholar is completely rethinking American history, and he's doing it by colliding South Asian post-colonial theory with cutting-edge AI. It's classical humanities meets futuristic tech. And I promise you, it is going to fundamentally change how you think about history, power, and data.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll meet Dr. Biswas, explore his philosophy on democratizing knowledge, unpack the America at 250 project, dig into his AI-assisted digital humanities engine, and finally look at AI's impact on media and society. By the end of this, we will absolutely connect the dots between classical Bengali literature and large language models.
Section 1. Meet Dr. Milton Biswas, the visionary. Let's start by looking at his unique ability to weave deeply personal cultural heritage together with some seriously futuristic technological ambition.
To understand the work, we have to understand the man. Dr. Biswas grew up in rural Bangladesh, right in the middle of the political turbulence of post-colonial Bengal. His childhood home was literally filled with recitations of Rabindranath Tagore and these incredibly spirited debates about national identity. And that direct exposure to contested narratives and political strife, that's exactly what shaped his drive to integrate marginalized voices into global scholarship. He eventually moved from studying Bengali literary modernism to a huge realization. To truly map global narratives, he needed computational power. And that realization led him directly into the fascinating world of AI and digital humanities.
Section 2. Knowledge as a democratic asset, the philosophy. Let's transition to the core moral philosophy that drives all of his academic research and digital initiatives. Knowledge is a collective inheritance, not a hoarded treasure. It's such a powerful quote, right? The core takeaway here is his fundamental belief that scholarship simply cannot be locked away behind elites' institutional paywalls. For Biswas, knowledge accessibility isn't just, a nice idea, it is a democratic catalyst. He firmly believes that utilizing AI and digital archives is the ultimate way to break scholarship out of academic silos and deliver it freely to the global public.
And this brilliantly illustrates the shift. We are moving away from traditional academia, which is often very Eurocentric, locked behind expensive paywalls, and rigidly single-discipline. Instead, Biswas is pioneering an approach that is deeply interdisciplinary, proudly utilizing a South Asian lens, fiercely open access, and heavily augmented by AI. He is proving that when we finally stop hoarding knowledge, we can build a dynamic, inclusive ecosystem that anyone in the world can tap into.
Section 3. The America at 250 project, inception and objectives. Let's introduce his magnum opus, a project designed to critically re-examine the narrative of United States democracy.
250. That number represents the approaching 250th anniversary of the United States. It's obviously a milestone ripe for reflection. But rather than just recycling the usual familiar narratives of American exceptionalism, Dr. Biswas uses an independent South Asian perspective to destabilize those myths. By looking at America through a post-colonial lens, which is a viewpoint deeply embedded in South Asia's own history of colonialism and intellectual resistance, he's able to see the U.S. not just as an isolated democratic experiment, but as part of a highly complex, globally entangled network.
The project specifically targets three core areas. First, it looks at how institutional power and civil rights actually function versus the idealized democratic narrative we're so used to. Second, it examines America's technological ascendancy, specifically how digital platforms influence political mobilization today. And finally, its massive cultural influence, particularly Hollywood. Basically, the research interrogates the glaring contradictions between democratic ideals and the stark realities of governance, surveillance, and representation.
Section 4. AI-assisted digital humanities, the technological engine. Now we shift our focus to the fascinating how behind the project, the actual tech that makes this massive analysis possible.
Digital humanities. By definition, it's the integration of classical humanities research with computational tools, digital archives, and artificial intelligence. Just imagine marrying the absolute rigor of classic textual criticism, the kind you'd use to analyze, say, a piece of 19th century poetry, with the immense processing power of modern computing. It allows him to scan vast, centuries-old datasets, from political speeches to digitized newspapers, at a scale a human simply couldn't achieve alone. It is a breathtaking collision of the ancient and the algorithm.
Let's move to and see how this builds in practice. It's a clear, four-step digital workflow. First, you have high-resolution digitization of fragile historical documents. Second, AI-enhanced OCR, or optical character recognition, which cleverly uses machine learning to read faded, handwritten texts and really old fonts. Third, complex metadata tagging to give all that data the necessary context. And fourth, careful LLM prompt engineering. That's used to guide large language models in finding thematic continuities and hidden ideological frameworks across these massive, massive data sets.
But here is the absolutely crucial pivot. Biswas views AI as an empathic collaborator. Actually, scratch the whole sci-fi idea of machines taking over. He firmly argues that AI doesn't replace human creativity, judgment, or ethical reflection. It just processes the data and finds the patterns. The human scholar is still entirely required to provide the cultural context and the empathy. It's about amplifying our human insight, not replacing it.
Section 5. AI, Media, and Society, Applications and Impact. Let's introduce our final analytical lens and explore what this AI-assisted research actually uncovers about modern American power.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visualizes power. When we think of American global dominance, we almost always default to military might and economic power, right? But Biswas's data-driven approach highlights a massive third pillar: cultural exports. Hollywood's soft power is just as crucial to American hegemony, effectively constructing the framework through which millions worldwide understand the United States.
When his AI analyzes Hollywood's output, it reveals a finely tuned narrative machine. The project shows exactly how Hollywood uses universal storytelling devices and mythic archetypes of freedom to construct a highly idealized version of the American ethos. And this acts as incredibly potent soft power. However, as Biswas's data-driven approach carefully deconstructs these texts, it reveals how these cinematic myths often completely gloss over the complex undercurrents of racial tension, systemic inequalities, and contested identities within the country.
The research also exposes what's called the AI paradox in modern society. It is very much a double-edged sword. Looking at the data, in education, AI promises personalized learning, but it carries the heavy risk of commodifying student data. In media, it drives incredible content generation, but creates echo chambers and deepfakes that fragment the public sphere. And in the justice system, it promises efficiency, but risks reinforcing historical bias through predictive policing. Technology can empower citizens, for sure, but it can just as easily reinforce historical inequalities.
Which brings us to a really powerful metaphor coined by Prof. Biswas: digital sedimentation. So what happens when a shiny new algorithm simply inherits and layers the old and coded biases of its human creators? Well, just like layers of sediment in a rock, historical prejudices, racialized stereotypes, and exclusionary logics become permanently baked into the datasets that train our AI. Innovation can sometimes just be a new wrapper for old hierarchies if we aren't vigilantly examining the data.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. As the U.S. passes its 250th milestone, how will AI and democratized knowledge shape the next 250 years of global democracy? Prof. Biswas envisions the future where technology isn't a tool for surveillance or control, but a true collaborator used to empower marginalized voices rather than silencing them. The future of humanities, and hey, perhaps democracy itself, depends on whether we choose to hoard our knowledge or share it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the narrative.